So what I'll do then is you can all get a recording of this anyway, so just in case I gloss over anything too quickly, and we'll get it up onto the YouTube as well, the YouTube channel as well. So so the returning to training, so we've been off now for pretty much 4 months from all activities. So you could probably take it that like adolescents especially, and even up to adults as well, haven't been too as regimented in their training, and probably in their intensive fitness training for a while now. So there are certain things, I suppose, that we should be looking out for when we get kids and adolescents and even adults back onto the field again. So if we click on here now, so I would hope that by the end of this 20-minute chat, that all we're doing, if anything, is I'm just allaying a small bit of fears about going back onto the field. I did my first session with a team just the other day, albeit it was just 10 lads in the field, pretty much in a local park. And I definitely had a small bit of like coaching anxiety going into it, of Jesus, what am I meant to do here? What am I like? My thought processes around coaching were probably slower than what they should be. So I suppose I want to bring that to the table as well, a small bit, and my experience of going back in after like 4 months or whatever being out, and what to expect. So if anything, I just want to hope that you're more comfortable in your mind about what to train and how training sessions should be ran when sessions do commence over the next over the next few weeks. So what should we expect to see from players? So this is probably the first thing that everybody's looking at, is what should we see from players. So I've heard over the past few weeks, a lot of coaches, be it at underage or like adolescent age, and adults, they're talking about players coming in being, I suppose, overweight, unfit, and probably rushing to the song of, okay, we need to do a pretty heavy few weeks work in order to get them back up to fitness before they start training or playing matches again. And it's probably not the case. I would be advocating anyway. So personally, on it, because I'm still a player, personally, I wouldn't prefer to my first few weeks of being back out on the field being ran the bejesus out of, and I think that would go for most ages. But I think there's a few things that we need to tick off in terms of getting players in and getting them feeling good again, assessing them skill set wise initially, and then maybe looking at the fitness side of things. So I'm always saying to lads at the start of a season in January or February or whatever it is to try and get into good habits, skill and training wise, that where you have no bad habits. So it's the best time to build a good habit is when you have no bad habits. So we're probably entering a phase similar to that as well. So at the start of the year, for example, I'm always trying to tell myself, okay, let's pick up the ball with 2 hands. Let's pick up the ball with 2 hands for the month of January, because it's mucky. Okay, so maybe tailoring our thinking around to just getting players into good habits. So a few things that we should expect from players. We should expect energy, enthusiasm, hyperness. So to be back in the field again, to be back around maybe some friends that they haven't seen, to be back maybe holding a hurley or having a football in their hand that they wouldn't have had in a while. And one thing I think some of the teachers, I suppose, here can testify is probably a lack of concentration. So concentration is a skill that's developed in the classroom, at home, when your parents are talking to you, and when your coaches are talking to you as well. And I suppose that skill might not have been trained in a few months. So that would probably be down the order from what it normally is. Okay, so expect a small bit of lack of concentration, and that all these points now will feed into our example training session later on. Expect skills not to be extremely poor. So a lot of lads again have talked about, this fella won't be able to do this, he hasn't practiced it in a while. So I would expect kids to have moved probably a small bit more than what they normally would have over the past few months, because they've been off of school. They might be out on the green with their friends, or with their brothers or sisters or whatever it may be. So they might have actually moved more than say this time last year for the same period. So I wouldn't be putting a label on that they'll be poor at skills, but they might have altered techniques, okay, because they haven't had their own coaching from GA coaches. So, for example, the players might have reverted to holding the hurley the wrong way or swinging the hurley the wrong way. Their hands might have changed. They might be dropping the ball off one hand for the opposite foot, that type of thing. So they're the things that I would be probably focusing on in the initial sessions as well. The other thing then are growth and movement abilities. Okay, so if we're looking at players being 12 to 16 in age group that we're looking at primarily here, they go through their peak height velocity, which is the growth spurt. Okay, so you'll probably see players that we haven't seen in 3, 4, 5 months, and they might be a foot taller. Okay, so they will have gone through their growth spurt or their growth their peak height velocity. So you'll see a noticeable difference there. That will lead to what you might know as adolescent awkwardness. So their ability to maybe pick up a ball via getting like maybe a foot or half a foot lower to the ground might be impacted. Picking a ball and hurling or football. Their running mechanics might be a small bit altered as well. So they might look a little bit more gangly. They might not be as fluid as maybe what you thought they were. And you might be quick to say, okay, that player clearly hasn't practiced or played skill or kicked around the ball or picked up a hurley in 4 months. And that's the reason for that. Okay, so try not to be too superficial on that side. So maybe talk to the player, maybe try and figure out, okay, are they taller? Are they a little bit more kind of gangly? And have they gone through that bit of a growth spurt? And that's leading to their skills being a little bit poor. Okay, so that's what I would say are the main things that we should be looking at and expect to see from players when they walk in the gate. So energy, enthusiasm, hyperness, lack of concentration, skill differences, not only for lack of practice, but for other reasons as well. Okay, so there's always a couple of reasons behind it. And I put this in as well. So what should players expect to see from us? So whether we like it or not, players are actually excited to get back training. Or whether we know it or not, players are excited to get back training as well. So I think what I would like to see from a player or as a player coming in back in training is a huge sense of enthusiasm. It is summer. It is June. We are going back on the field. This is the time that, normally, again, if you've gone through a good few seasons, which many of us have, you just associate with championship and you associate with crowds in the bottom field and you associate with going to championship matches at inter-county stage. So I suppose a sense of enthusiasm is there. Calling people by their names. Okay, so as I said, I was a bit rusty going into my first session the other day, and I called a guy Connor when his name was Killian. So I'm guessing that he didn't feel too welcome from me in the first stage. So I obviously, halfway through the session, I pulled him aside and said, I apologise for that, Killian. And I said I acknowledge my mistake. So just small things like that I know can have a big difference, especially when it can be a little bit awkward when kids and adolescents haven't seen you for a while. I suppose they're probably only 4 months older, but when they haven't seen us for a while, they probably think that we're about 50 years older. You know what I mean? So welcoming back to the club, obviously protocols, etc., and guidelines are to follow. I should have started with that point that I said it to Paul this morning on the call is like, I'm not really talking too much about like protocols and processes around the actual coronavirus and guidelines, etc. This is just for training, just in case. Direction on how the session would proceed and guidelines to follow. So again, kids are smart. They're not very stupid or anything. They know what's going on. They know that things are different. They know that certain things will be different when they come back to the field. Their parents will have briefed them. Obviously, parents will have had to do one or two things if they're underage, in order that they are to come back safely into training. So they know that there is going to be different things. So I'm guessing that, albeit what I said in the last slide about their concentration being low, they will be pretty clued into what you're telling them. Okay, organization on a coaching side. So everyone is going to be rusty, as I was saying myself. Everyone's going to be rusty. You're going to, give a cue that's not really, or a coaching cue that's not really applicable. You're going to, send 5 players over there when you probably just didn't divide them up right. That's okay. Absolutely fine. The first few weeks, I think people are just happy to be back out on the field. So our session then should kind of conform to everything that we're saying here, and be simple in nature. Okay. A few important points. Again, these are probably more anecdotal in the sense that, like, these are things that I've heard from, through the grapevine a small bit. So I've heard a lot of coaches going, okay, if our championship is in 4 or 5 weeks, we have to hit the ground running. And I'd be hesitant in saying that. Okay, so you're not catching up for last time. Everyone is in the same boat for the past few months. Players are probably more physically active in the past 4 months, as I said, versus if COVID-19 didn't happen. So say for the 4 months last year, they've probably been more physically active, and we must take that as a plus, really. So they haven't been in school, they haven't been sitting down, for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. They might have been sitting down a lot every day, but more often than not, we've had good weather. They've probably been out and about, even in the backyard, getting away from the parents, climbing a tree. So we must give them dues on that side as well. Adolescents, they won't have gained much weight. I shouldn't think so. It's just not in their physiological makeup at those ages to heavily gain weight, especially if they're physically active as well. So again, I suppose this is kind of common sense, but it's just making a point of it that the players will come back. They will be moderately fit, I would think, but they mightn't be able to tolerate huge demands of training initially, and I'll talk about that in the next slide or two. Returning to training shouldn't be a pre-season, so it shouldn't be kind of going into a slog. It should be pretty enjoyable. It should be fun. It should be obviously quite organized, and it should be just a bit of a release. Okay. Again, just being a player, all I want to do is go into the bottom field and drive a ball as far up the field as I can, and that's all I want to do. And I think most fellas, especially at underage, will be the same. I think this is a huge opportunity. So again, a lot of coaches have said, "Oh, we can't do contact, we can't do games, we can't do X, Y, and Z." But I think it is a huge opportunity for developing individual skills and communication skills. So, for example, I don't think that there's any other session or any other time that you could meet a player going into the bottom field or the top field or whatever it may be, give him a slitter or a football. Slitter probably more appropriate because you have more slitters than footballs maybe. Give him a ball and say, that's your ball for the session. You hold on to that ball for the whole session. Don't give it to anybody else. I want you to flick it around on your foot, flick it around in your hurley. And that child might come away with, a couple of hundred more touches in that training session than in a regular training session whereby they're playing games and they might only get a certain limited amount of contact with the ball. So it's a huge opportunity for developing individual skills and a huge opportunity for developing communication skills. So if you can't be close to a guy and you want him to move or you want something to happen, you have to tell him from a distance. So I think it's a huge opportunity to develop communication skills. Now, breaking that down for players will be the tricky part until they take ownership of that themselves. So again, you could set up some kind of a drill, just write it on a blank piece of paper about, okay, if a player is to carry a ball, they're carrying the ball around an area, predetermined square area. They must communicate with another player that is holding as well, that they might not crash into. So I'm going right, okay, I'll go right as well, so that they're going in opposite directions. Okay, some communication games like that would be valuable. So if we move it along, so some physiological adaptations on the science side. So as I said, players won't have gained weight, but they might not be able to tolerate excessive high intensity training immediately. So tolerating high intensity training, so things like games, very intensive sprinting drills, it takes practice to be able to build up to that stage. So if you're thinking about getting players in and getting them to do like doggies or suicides, like shuttles, they'll probably blow up during that. When I say blow up, I mean they will be out of breath pretty quickly and mightn't be able to continue. Okay, so we must because they haven't been exposed to that. They might be able to run around and do skill-based work until we build their tolerance for it. Okay, so they won't be able to tolerate high intensity training immediately, like anybody. Okay, so it's like any of us going out and sprinting up and down the road 10 times just because we haven't done it. It would probably feel quite horrendous. So we won't ask our kids to do that either. Like, you know, I'm not saying we need to be walking around the pitch now, but it's just keep in mind that some of the drills that we more normally do might just be off limits for a few weeks, and I'll talk about it now in a second. So coordination and spatial awareness might be a challenge. So I talked about the peak height velocity, which is the growth spurt, and that in combination with not having a regular close contact sports whereby they learn spatial awareness, it can impact on their coordination and their spatial awareness. So just in case you're doing a drill and you see two players coming pretty close together, and we know it's a 2 meter rule at the minute, you know, just be gentle on that and say, look lads, pull apart there now, rather than maybe lambasting them there straight there and then. Okay, so just guide them through with gentle reminders on space. Use external cueing for coordination and skill development. So I'm guessing that especially like the younger you go with the age groups, the cues, so the language of coaching that we normally use. So we'd say pick up a ball, get the body behind the ball. You know, these types of cues that we'd normally throw out in hurling and football, they might not be as well received normally, because players have just been out of the game for a while and haven't been listening to us. So it would be a good time to experiment with external cueing. So external cueing, I've mentioned it before, I think on a couple of occasions, but it's using things that are more common in life to get a point across. So I'll always remember when I was younger and I was learning how to pick up the ball. I remember Bill Kelleher telling me, pretending you're digging a hole with a shovel. So I'd get under the ball and I'd scoop it up as high as I can. So that was an external cue. So it just made me realize, okay, that's the motion that I must do in order to get the ball up. Okay. Whereas if he said, plant your foot, make sure that you swipe the hurley and make sure that you catch the ball low to the boss. Like if he told me that, I probably wouldn't have got it. So be a good time to experiment with external cues. So for example, if it was a jump, you'd say explode up like a rocket. Or if it was a solo in football, I have a thing in my head. It might not be applicable to kids, but I always think kiss the ball with my toe. So when I say kiss the ball with my toe, it's just a very light contact, and it just means that the ball just floats up in front of me again, rather than kicking the ball. I'm just kissing the ball at my toe. So again, developing cue like that. So a kiss is never really hard. Okay, it's normally quite soft. Sham's laughing there. Sham, you kiss hard. So just external cues will work well, especially for younger ages. It'll make things more applicable in their own head, and you'll get a faster response in terms of skill development as well from them. Susceptibility to injury will be higher in the 3 to 4 weeks returning to training. That's across the board. If you haven't done something in 3 or 4 months and you go back doing it immediately, then your susceptibility to injury will be higher. The best thing as the coach that we can do is monitor it. So I have a Word document here. So let's see if I can get this out here now. I don't know if I can. Oh yeah. So I just did a sample sample Word document, something that would be like really straightforward. So what we have here is a 5-week block, okay, for example, with say 2 training sessions per week, so it leads up to 10 training sessions. All we're doing is just monitoring the duration, so the amount of minutes that we spend training. In this case, we'd start off session 1 is 40 minutes. So I was with a senior team the other day, and we did 40 minutes, and we were out the gap. Because we just, we haven't earned the right to train for an hour and 15 minutes yet. There would just be a huge spike in our load, and it's the same across the board. So it's the same for under 12s, same for adults. So 40 minutes, and the next session would be 45 minutes. And if you look along the timeline here, all we're doing is just building up the tolerance up until we're up around that kind of 60 to 70 minute mark, which is kind of common for most training sessions. And if you look at the intensity, then it just starts to climb again with the duration of the sessions. So every week you're just adding in maybe, okay, a couple more sprints to the ball, or a couple of more intense based drills, so like jumping, catching, that type of a thing. Okay, so just a few points on it. So duration is relative to the normal duration for your age group. So say for an under 12s team, they might train for an hour, versus a senior team might train for an hour and a half. Okay, so the times here are numbers, but they're relative to the training that you'd normally do. So in this instance, I just have an hour there, as you can see. Intensity refers to the level, skill level needed. Okay, so we're not going in straight away teaching a fella how to hit the ball on his weak side from the sideline over the bar. We're just teaching them basics again, picking the ball, hitting the ball, and feeling good about it, and how intense certain parts of the session should be performed. So remember, it's not pre-season. So intensity for the next few weeks, I would advise, comes in tasks and skills done at speed rather than suicide shuttles, that type of a thing. So the intensity, say from week 1 to week 2, would climb, where I'd say, okay lads, in the first week you 15 seconds, pick up the ball as many times as you can in 15 seconds, and I'd climb that intensity up to a 6 out of 10 the next time by saying, okay lads, you've 30 seconds now to pick up the ball as many times as you can. So it's not me running them, okay, it's me adding a small bit more intensity by giving them a small bit more time to do things, or asking them to do 1 or 2 extra drills. That's all it is. So if we go back to here, a couple more slides now, lads, and then we're done. It'll pop up. Okay. So the best thing to do is monitor it. So something like that. I'll send it out in an email later on, so you can have a look at it. For the session, so what will it look like? So the first few sessions back should be extremely simple. So with the session I did a day or 2 ago, the session was something along the lines of everybody in a big circle, stretch, have a bit of a chat, just be a bit social because they haven't seen each other in a while. Then we gave them all a ball, and they did a 5-meter sprint to a pick ball. Sprint is just 5 meters, you don't really sprint, you just run and pick the ball, drop the ball, and we did that for about 10 minutes. Different types of scenarios there. Pick the ball and turn left, that's all. Really simple stuff. So it's really basic that we're looking at. All we're doing is getting back coaching. Players are getting back to being coached, and guidelines are in place that we're unfamiliar with. So don't put any pressure on yourself to deliver the best session ever. Everyone's going to be rusty. Everyone's going to say things and go, flipping hell, I didn't really mean to say that. Or give a drill that they're not really, haven't done in a while. So your session should be just 3 to 4 drills only, especially the first week where you're only training, say, for example, 3/4 of an hour. Spaced out as best as possible. So I think I have it here. Didn't even, something along the lines of my pitch setup. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see that, but I just I wrote out in stick, you probably won't see it. I wrote out in stickmen on my page, where people go, and if you can see, it's kind of like a circular format there. So I just wrote out, okay, they're going to be in a circle, and keep them apart. They have a slitter, and that was happy then in my head. It's simple enough to do, but it's just keeps your kind of mind clear then. So the open field will be a sight for sore eyes for young and all. So I think everybody's excited to be back on the field. For younger age groups and probably older age groups as well, start with an assessment. So get them around in a circle, talk to them, welcome them, say welcome back. Assess their ready position if it's with the hurley. Assess their striking grip. Did they swap hands over the past few months? Assess their kicking hand and leg. If they're soloing, can they solo right hand to right foot, left hand to left foot? Or are they swapping? Have they done something there that just doesn't seem right, or isn't in the best practice in terms of technique, etc. They're the main things I would be working on. And here is our last slide. It's just like an example session that I would throw out there as being just a really good start point for you all. Okay. So your introduction, 5 minutes. You give the fellas the ball or whatever it is. Give them their station if they're doing a station type session. The warm-up spaced out on the field, follow the leader, which is the coach, and you demonstrate a couple of squats, a couple of hurley swings, lunges, leg kicks, a couple of jumps, a couple of toe touches, just general movement. Just get them moving, get them warm for 5 minutes. And then what I'd say is go into, if it's hurling, for example, as I said, just go into like a striking or kicking drill. Let them be free. Enjoy space. Obviously, keep it apart to the point whereby it's within the guidelines. So, for example, a simple drill is one fella in line with the pole that holds up the nets, the other fella at the other side, and just have them striking ball over and back and leave them off for 8, 9, 10 minutes. Because that's what they want to do. That's what everybody's itching to do. So try not to be too hard going straight into like the sport-specific side drills. Just get them striking, kicking, and coach that then. Coach the striking, coach the kicking, coach the enjoyment of space. Like, for example, drill 2, like I said there, just moving onto a ball, pick it, drop it, walk back, go again, practice your picking. Moving, static, turning. So do like a roll pick where you're static, do a moving roll pick. So you have to run onto it, pick it, turn left and right, accelerate through with a jab lift. A drill 3 then is a solo exercise, so like doing like an individual relay. So everybody has a ball and 2 cones who can pick the ball, go to the cone, back type relay work. Okay. So like it's really simple, really easy for you to coach, really easy for them to get, and really easy, I suppose, just to follow the guidelines, etc. That would be in place for the next few weeks. I'd also, as well, as you see there in the cool down, is give them a skill homework exercise to do. So I just ask them, look lads, this is what I want you to work on in the next few days, so that when you come back in, we're assessing that then in the warm-up. Give them that to do, and then just, that's your warm-up for the next day. Just assess that skill. I think if you do that, you're onto a pretty good way to do it. To continue on into training, that's the presentation, lads. That's pretty much it.